So Minnesota passed its budget this past weekend by cutting spending across the board without any tax hikes. Here to tell us how he did it, Minnesota Republican Governor Tim Pawlenty, a leading GOP hopeful contender for 2012. Governor Pawlenty, this is one of the great political stories of the year. They're calling you the Ronald Reagan of Minnesota. As I understand it, you went in there to impound a couple of $1 billion. The courts tried to stop you. The legislature wanted to jack up taxes, and you became Dr. No and you won. Is that true? It's a great political story. Do I have it right, sir?
Well, I think you have it basically right, Larry, but in the court's case, I fought the law, and the law won. I unallotted, that's the term for cutting the money out of the budget last year. That went to the Minnesota Supreme Court. They said I exceeded my authority, but fortunately we got the legislature to reenact it anyhow. So they sued me only to find out they agreed with me.
Well, you know, we talk a lot of Tea Party on this program, and this sounds very much like a Tea Party type solution because, as you know, those guys want limited government, indeed constitutional limits to government, and no higher taxes. They want tax reform and lower spending. Are you being guided by those principles? It sure sounds like it, but you tell me.
Well, everybody has different styles. I just tell people to look at the results. I cut spending in Minnesota for the first time in the 150-year history of the state, budget cycle to budget cycle. We moved Minnesota out of the top 10 in taxes, which is a 30-year goal for every governor for the last 30 years. We started to move our teachers from seniority to performance pay. We've begun to reform our entitlement programs so they're not based on, autopilot spending, 1940s industrial models, and much, much more. But I'm very proud of taking my very liberal state and bringing it back into a more market-oriented, more free enterprise, more entrepreneurial-leaning direction.
So, Governor, why can't this be a model for governing in Washington, D.C.?
Well, it's a battle, Larry. Some people look at Massachusetts and say it's the most liberal state in the country. I would argue Minnesota is. Massachusetts voted for Ronald Reagan twice. Minnesota never did. But the good news is here, this is no longer going to be about right or left or Republican versus Democrat. This is a matter of junior high mathematics. You can't have a revenue chart, or a spending chart that looks like this and a revenue chart that looks like that. An 8th grader can tell you this isn't going to work. And so this is going to come to the day of reckoning. And so we're going to have to rein in spending. And the fact of the matter is the people of this country are now tuned into these issues. They're mad. They've had enough. And you saw the beginning. You saw the foreshadowing of what's going to happen this November last night.
Tell me more about the foreshadowing last night.
Well, for the first time in my adult life, we have average people outside of partisan politics saying, this spending's out of control, the government isn't focused, we're not getting good return or ROI for the money we're spending, and average people are saying, I've had enough, we're going to do a do-over, we're going to push the reset button, and they're throwing people out who don't agree with this perspective. I was at my breakfast table a week or two ago with my 8th grade daughter. True story, there was a newscast about Greece. She looked up from our breakfast and she said, that's going to be America soon. That's from the mouth of an 8th grader, Larry. So if an 8th grader can figure this out, the politicians in Washington should as well.
Well, so you're basically, I don't know if you're running for president or not. You'll tell us when you're ready to tell us. But my point is, as governor of a big state like Minnesota, which, as you point out, is a blue state, it's a liberal state, you're really doing this by example. And I just want to add, do you talk on the phone to New Jersey Governor Chris Christie? Because he's doing the same thing in a very lefty-type state, and it seems to be popular medicine, the idea of holding down spending without jacking up taxes.
Yeah, and the gig is up because when you go around, and I do talk to Chris Christie, he and I are friends. I campaign for him in New Jersey. I think he's a fabulous leader. He's going to be a great governor for a state that needs it. But I'll just give you one quick example. I took the longest transit strike here in Minnesota in the history of the country, 44 days, because bus drivers, government-paid bus drivers, could work for 15 years and then get their health care paid for the rest of their lives. When I went around Minnesota and said to everybody else, if you're not in government, do you get to work 15 years and have that? No hands ever went up. And we got that benefit shut off. But that is another example of government starting to look more like Europe than what we remember America being. And we've got to get back to American common sense, not European solutions from the last century.
And to recoin Dan Henniger's Wall Street Journal column a couple weeks ago, is the Republican Party going to become the party that we are not Europe? Is that where you want to take the GOP? We are not Europe. We are not going to be the welfare state.
Well, I want to be fair to Europe in the sense that old Europe is different from new Europe. If you look at Poland and the Czech Republic and some other places, they're more entrepreneurial, more dynamic, more market-oriented. But, we do not want to move towards a socialistic model. And we have people who are in this country when a famous person once said, when you have more people riding in the wagon than you have pulling the wagon, you got yourself a problem. And when the news report out a week or two ago that 47% of Americans don't pay federal taxes, that's a barometric measure of too many people riding in the wagon and not pulling the wagon.
So will you take this message on the road, sir, and actually run for president?
Well, I'm taking it on the road trying to help for 2010, and then we'll see after that how it goes, Larry. I haven't made any decisions about that. I will early next year.
All right, Governor Tim Pawlenty, thank you for coming back on the program. We look forward to talking to you again and again. Congratulations on your fiscal victory in Minnesota, sir.
Thank you, Larry.